We're here, Baruch Hashem, we're learning Perek Lamed Beis on page Mem Aleph of Tanya. Lamed Bet, right. But let me give you a brief introduction because it's necessary. This chapter in Tanya, in the original version of Tanya, which is called Madura Kama, I don't know if you know, but the Alter Rebbe wrote a first version of Tanya. What we're studying is not the first version. We're studying the second version, the final version. The first version, we have a copy of it, and the Rebbe instructed it be printed, I believe, in 1981 or so, and they actually published it, and it's available. And there are differences in words, in paragraphs, and things like that. Another major difference is that in that Tanya, what's called Madura Kama, first edition, there's no Perek Lamed Beis. This chapter that we're going to learn today, begin studying, doesn't exist there. And the reason? This chapter is all about Avas Yisrael, which in our present situation is very apropos. But regardless, as far as the flow of Tanya, from chapter 31, continuing to chapter 33, this chapter really shouldn't be here. Because if you recall, I told you that the 9 chapters in Tanya, from chapter 26 through 34, are one continuum. And the theme is Moshe Simcha. How to live a life of Simcha, how to be Oved Hashem Menashe, to serve God with Simcha, even in a situation as we have it today and when we have personal situations, right? And the Alter Rebbe discussed this at length. So if that's the case, where is there room to talk about Avos Yisrael? It's just not the appropriate context. And that's why, in the first edition of the Tanya, it wasn't there. But the Alter Rebbe, for some reason, which maybe we'll talk a little about soon, the Alter Rebbe saw it fit that the final version of Tanya, the final edition, which we study, and we've been studying since the Tanya came out, it does have chapter 32. So the Rabbeim already said, the Lubavitcher Rabbeim and Chassidim, that it happens to be that which chapter was inserted between 31 and 33, naturally 32, but the word 32 in Hebrew is Lev, right? Lamed Beis equals the acronym, the gematria of Lamed Beis is 32. Now, this isn't just a play on words. Remember, I've taught you many times that the whole system of gematria isn't abracadabra. It's false and it's foolish to think that it's a little game here. Oh, it happens to be 32 equals the heart. No, it's a lot. It has, for it to have Torah value, it has to have intrinsic value that makes sense. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is going to do here, is going to show us how this idea of Avas Yisrael, of Lev, of the heart, is relevant to helping a Jew have Simcha in Avodas Hashem. And if it weren't relevant to our service of God, of being an Oved Hashem and a better person, a better Yid, and a Beinoni and all that, it's meaningless. You know, many people have hearts. You know, I think what was one of the foundations, the Heart Foundation, is like a heart. We're not just talking about having a heart. We're talking about here a Jewish heart. And we're talking about a heart that's predicated on God. Not just because it feels good to do humanitarian care, but it has to be predicated on Hashem. So this is what we're going to learn now. That's one thing I want to tell you. Number 2, the last chapters 29, 30, and 31, were like heavy Musar chapters of the Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe, in order to talk about Simcha and attaining Simcha, you have to know the flip side. If you live in fantasy world, it's a nice world, but it doesn't go anywhere. And the flip side is that the world we live in has problems, has issues, has evil. has bad, right? Our personal life has struggles. So the Alter Rebbe, and therefore, these things become blockages. More so, where do these things emerge from? So the Alter Rebbe brings the Zohar HaKadosh. With the Zohar, the Holy Zohar says, Avram, it comes from the Klippa, from the negative, extraneous husk and shell that conceals God, called Klippa. And this Klippa causes a blockage. So you daven in the morning, you daven with Kavanah, and you go down, you go to work, you go to eat, you go to work, and all of a sudden, you don't feel what you daven. There's a blockage. The Klippa was created by God for the purpose of challenging the man, the Jew, and creates a blockage. So the Alter Rebbe in chapters 29 and 30 gave us meditations, ideas to think about how to break this blockage. That's what he did in 29 and 30. And some of it involved our lowliness, how we are shuffle, not shuffle in the sense of humility, but how we are coarse and how we are governed by our bodily needs. And the Alter Rebbe spoke a lot about it. Remember, I told you on one page in chapter 29, he says the words, he, ha'odam atzmai. This is man himself, referring to the Nefesh Abamis. That man is Nefesh Abamis. So this was part of the discussion. Then came chapter 31, and the Alter Rebbe says that you might now be very depressed. And you might say, how can I ever come to Simcha? If you're telling me that I am a grub, Nefesh Abamis, I'm a coarse animal, okay? All I want is food and sleep and taivas and everything else, everyone on their own level. How am I going to ever be with Simcha? How can I truly, So the Alter Rebbe in chapter 31 says an amazing thing. He says, Tiyaker nafshay, make the focus of your soul, which is in your body, primary, and realize that it is the most precious thing in your life. In other words, put the focus on the spiritual, not on the physical. And yes, your physicality is grub. We know that. He says, but let that not be mevalvel. Let that not confuse the goal and the mission. The goal and the mission is to be spiritual, to be holy, to elevate ourselves. And in other words, when you're davening and you're learning and you're shedding a tear for Hashem in your avodas Hashem, that's the truth. That's who you really are. The fact that your body schleps you right afterwards to no good stuff and all that, that's not the real you. And the Alter Rebbe says another thought in chapter 31, a phenomenal thought. He says, the fact that your soul, your neshama, is schlepped into the narishkeit, to the nonsense of the taiva, of the nefesh abamis, of the Yetzer Hara, it should evoke within you greater mercy for your soul. Because this is who you are. If you know this is who you are, and now you realize that who you are is in darkness, you have more mercy. I want to get out of here. Not to say, I'm a goner, I'm finished. Really, I'm a behemoth, I'm grub, I'm coarse. And my soul and my nefesh is ancillary. Once in a while, it wakes up, it pops up and says, hey, let me do something for Hashem. No, just the opposite. So the more you focus and understand that a yid, be'etzem, is neshama and ruchnius, and as the Rebbe would say, a yid is l'mayla min hateva. The nature of a Jew is transcendence. Not the nature of a Jew is humanity, and there's something, an adjunct within humanity called transcendence. Totally wrong. Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov teaches us, this is a Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. This isn't just Chabad. The Baal Shem Tov's teaching is just the opposite. We are transcendent. And we struggle to put our transcendence into the world of Gashmias. which ultimately we need to do, because if you remain transcendent on a mountain, you're going into the clouds and you have no reality. You have to bring transcendence in the physical world. But the fact is, we are l'mayla min hateva. So therefore, a Jew cannot say, and I say cannot, I don't mean, you can say whatever you want, but the truth is, a Jew is not normal. Not normal. And that's why the Goyim have a problem with us, because the world of Goyim is the world of normalcy. 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 does not equal 3. We are 1 + 1 = 3. And that's how it comes out. Sometimes, for whatever reason, Hashem makes it come out through events that happened last Shabbos, which is very, catastrophic and negative and bad and everything else. But that's the way it comes out. There's different ways HaKadosh Baruch Hu, throughout our history, brings about the l'mayla min hateva in teva. But that's the fact. The fact is that we are transcendent. So therefore, we are not normal. And that's why the guy does not understand us at the end of the day. Okay? So therefore, what does the Alter Rebbe say in chapter 31? If you know that this is who you are as a Jew, and now you're telling me that you are schlepped into Taivas, have more mercy on who you are. It's like your talent, your whatever you are is like buried. Have mercy on yourself. Get out of there. You can get out of there, because that's not who you are. You're in a foreign field. This is what he said in chapter 31. Now he comes along in chapter 32 and he says, based on this theme, that you are to make the focus of your life, the soul, the neshama, over the body. This makes it possible to have true Avas Yisrael. And when you have true love for another like yourself, that reveals that your modus operandi for all of life and all of Torah is about God being primary and humanity being secondary, or worldliness being secondary. In other words, the chiddush over here that we're going to learn soon is that Avas Yisrael is not just another mitzvah. Love your neighbor as yourself. V'yohavta l'reyacha kamecha. So when you learn that in Parshas Kedoshim, when you learn that in the Torah, what does a Jew walk away with, Moshe, after learning that in the Torah? The Jew walks away with, there's another mitzvah. And in the Minui HaMitzvahs, when you count mitzvahs, according to the Shmag and according to the Rambam and others, you count that as one of the mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe soon will teach us here, it's not just another mitzvah. It is the essence of every mitzvah. How is Avas Yisrael the essence of tefillin? Tefillin is bind your hand, bind yourself to Hashem. What does that have to do with Avas Yisrael? Soon we're going to find out how. And the nutshell of it, the explanation is that the essence of every mitzvah is God being primary and Gashmias, materiality, being ancillary. So in Avas Yisrael, in the mitzvah of loving another Jew as yourself, it's revealed. In tefillin, when you put tefillin on, you don't see that. I'm binding myself to Hashem, right? But when you love another Jew as yourself, even though that Jew seems to be much lower than you, or not as observant, and is not as involved, not as normal, and all that, and yet you love him, and not just you love him or her as yourself, kamoicha, that shows that you're not focusing on the yarmulke and the payas and the clothing. Just the Shabbos, I was here in Florida by my son, right? So during the weekend, I saw someone from the shul bring someone else in. Someone else comes along. He had tattoos all over his body written in Hebrew, even onto his forehead. Mamish. You can read Torah from his body. He had tattoos. Right? A Yid. He's a Yiddish boy. A Yiddish boy. Avas Yisrael. Kamoicha. Right? Now, you tell me in Mea Shearim or in Borough Park, if they would have Avas Yisrael to such a Yid. It's like probably many people wouldn't want to get close to him. It's like they're disgusted, Not that they hate him, but it's like, ugh. And from the outside, it does look icky, for a person who doesn't have tattoos all over his body. In Hebrew, it's pretty weird. It's pretty strange. And this is a Yiddish boy. Avas Yisrael. To such a Yid as well. Not even to such a Yid. To such a Yid, because guess what? The chitzonius is the tattoos. The essence is the neshama. So the essence of every Yid is the neshama. The neshama has no tattoos. The neshama is not fathomed by tattoos. And this was the Rebbe, if you talk about the Rebbe's breakthrough, when he started with sending out the shluchim to college campuses in the 60s and everything else. This was a big thing. I think I told you when Rabbi Kunin came to California in 1965. So he just was new from New York. He didn't have funds. So he went and he parked himself somewhere in Fairfax, which is a section of Los Angeles where the Frum Yidden started to migrate to from Boyle Heights, it was called, which was the old Jewish section of the 40s and 50s. Anyway, and his work was he opened up the first Chabad house on campus at UCLA. No, it was the 60s. Everyone's wearing, the ponytails and everything else that you all know about. So it's pretty wild. Shabbos, he needs a shul. He's a frum guy, Kurin. And he has guests, all these hippies, all these chevra. So he brings them with him to shul. Los Angeles at the time was really Hungarian Jews who survived, Hungarian Polish Jews, primarily Hungarian Jews. When he came into shul with these hippies, they were very upset and they didn't want them. Their odor wasn't a great odor, to put it mildly. The look was, as I described before. And here, these are people, who are, from Hungary. They were beardless. They weren't, with beards, but nevertheless, they were put together and they were trying to make their life. And they made their life, and they did very well, and they established families, and they did tremendous tzedakah and chesed and everything else. And so they went over to Rabbi Reichik, who was the superior of Rabbi Kunin, because he came as a shliach for the Rebbe Rayatz, the sixth Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe in 1949. And Kunin first came in 65. So he had 16 years on him, And they said to Rabbi Reichik, if you don't tell him to stop bringing these people here, we're going to run you out of town. And they were friends with Rabbi Reichik. And they considered Rabbi Reichik a Rebbe. It was very holy. They gave him they gave him petition notes to bring to the Rebbe, to bring to the oil. He was by them, the Rebbe of Los Angeles was Rabbi Shmuel David Reichik, the Lubavitcher Shliach, because he was a very, very refined person. But nevertheless, you don't bring these guys into our shul. And Rabbi Reichik told Rabbi Kunin, you got to make your own shul. I understand where you're coming from, because I'm in the same work in a way, but these people don't relate to it. And Kunin ultimately moved from Fairfax to UCLA. That's where he opened the Chabad house on Gailey Avenue, which some of you, I'm sure, have seen. That's the trajectory and the story of how Chabad moved to Westwood. In other words, before he was living in Fairfax, doing activities at UCLA, but he wasn't living there, But it became unbearable because the people couldn't relate to them. And at the end, it worked out, meaning to say that they became supporters of Rabbi Kunin, many of those Hungarians. And Rabbi Kunin helped them with their kids because these people, not all of them had kids that stayed frum or were on the way of becoming not frum, and other issues with Goyim. And there were issues. They don't think the issues didn't exist by the Frumies in the 60s in Los Angeles or in Chicago or New York. We had plenty of issues. and couldn't help them, okay? But nevertheless, there's a time and place. So I'm just giving this story, that really happened. That's just a story that the idea of breaking through and putting the focus on the neshama versus the guf is not an easy one. In other words, in a way, the Hungarian Jews were saying normalcy is first. Be a mensch. Be dressed nicely. Come to shul like a mensch. Right? What are we saying? What's the Alter Rebbe saying? Yes, if someone has that sensitivity, that's the way it should be. And if not, they're no less of a yid. So the kid that comes in here, I bet you, if he continues coming in a year now, I don't know how those tattoos will come off. I'm not a maven in tattoo removal, but there'll be a change in this boy's view. Okay, and he had a big afro of hair with a yechi yarmulke. So I don't know what's going on over here, but it was very interesting, right? Trust me, if he stays with the program for a year with these Chabadniks, I believe in a year from now, he'll probably won't have his afro and somehow he'll be covered up more. So if he, those tattoos aren't seen as much, The point being that put the focus on the neshama. Don't put the focus on the guf. That's what the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us now. So it is a connection to chapter 31. Again, I repeat, just like in 31 it tells us, the way to have simcha in your life is to focus on the good, on the neshama, not on the lowliness of the body. And in which mitzvah is that seen more than any other mitzvah? The mitzvah of Avas Yisrael. If you can love another yid kamoicha, like yourself, with that same, you accept yourself, right? When's the last time you saw someone say, I don't accept myself? I mean, it's not often we say that. What I do is right. What I do is right. The way I look is right. We all justify our behavior. Kamoicha. If you can justify your behavior, justify another yid's behavior. Meaning to say that you find an excuse, we find an excuse for our behavior. Find an excuse for his behavior. Where was he raised? Where was this boy raised? Do you know his background? Do you know about his parents? Do you know about his community? No, you don't know. All you know is you see today that he comes in dressed the way he is and everything else I described before. Well, that's very shallow. That's very shallow. That's such a shallow approach to another yid. So the Alter Rebbe says that if you are Makayim, if you're able to fulfill the mitzvah of Yahavta l'reyacha kamoicha, that shows that your thinking, your paradigm is soul over body, soul over Yetzer Hara, soul over Nefesh Abamis. And if that's who you are, then what it says in chapter 31 will be much easier, that you won't become morbid and depressed from the negative and your guf, but you'll put your focus on your soul and you'll have simcha in your life. That's I spoke out pretty much what it says. Now let's learn inside a few lines. Perek Lamed Beis, chapter 32. V'hinei ayidei kiyum hadvorim hanal, through fulfilling the words that we said before in chapter 31, which is liyois gufay nivze v'nimes be'enov, that your body be despicable and disgusting in your own eyes. The body in the sense of the taivas, of the indulgences and the cravings that are unhealthy, they should be disgusting and despicable. Rather, only simchasa, your happiness, your simcha, tiyeh should be simchas hanefesh levada, from the happiness of the soul alone. Right? Hillel, not happiness of the soul together, just levada. The only thing that turns you on, that makes you really, is soul, is neshama. Nothing else turns you on. Turns you on in the sense of Holiness. I don't mean, sexually, etc. Holiness. Simcha. Tia simchas hanefesh levada. The only thing in your life that gives you simcha is nefesh, is neshama. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe says, Harizu. Look, the next line is gewaldig. Harizu derech yeshara. This is the proper yashar, the right path. V'kala, number 2, and the easy path. Lavai lidei, to come, to fulfill kiyam mitzvahs v'yohavta l'reyacha kamoicha, to the mitzvah of loving your friend as yourself, l'chol nefesh mi Yisrael. Not just to everyone, to every Jewish soul, and then the Alter Rebbe even adds, migodol vat kotten. From the Godol, the great one, to the Kotten, to the small one. Now, the Alter Rebbe, why does he have to add these words? L'chol nefesh mi Yisrael. Iser, l'chol nefesh mi Yisrael. He doesn't suffice with saying those words, Menashe. He says, v'yohavta l'reyacha kamoicha, l'chol nefesh mi Yisrael l'migodol v'kotten. And the reason is the following, because there's 2 types of ava. This is a general idea. There's what we call ava atzmis, natural love. Ava atzmis, love for yourself. Does someone have to tell us to love ourselves? No. I mean, at times we beat ourselves up and that's not good. But we're talking about it's natural for us to have love on ourselves, like I said before. We justify everything about ourselves. Ava atzmis. Then, because it's you. It's atzmi. It's you. Then there's ava. There's a love that comes with a siba and a tam. A reason. I love you. I care for you because you do this and this for me, or you compliment this and this for me. I am weak in organization, and you help me organize my life. Therefore, I love you. I care for you. That's an ava with a tam, with a reason. Guess what? When a love is predicated on a reason, Botlo ha-mesuviv, botlo ha-siba, which means when the effect is nullified, is annulled, is no longer there, the cause is annulled. And my dear Chavayrim, therefore today, what do we see? What the world calls, I fell out of love. It's because to begin with, your love was based on a siba. If the love is not based on a siva, but it's based on a belief that this is from heaven, it's a whole different experience. Now, of course, there is a concept of a get, and there are the halachic reasons for divorce. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that when a love is based on a siba, then when the siba no longer exists, I find someone else. You were good for me for 20, 30, 40 years, but now I have no feelings and and therefore. But what if you have the attitude, which is the attitude of the chassid that I've told you in the past, but I'll remind you the story. Chassid at Tzemach Tzedek. He was davening Shabbos with his talis over his head. It was 2:00 in the afternoon, and the wife comes in and she says, Baruch! Come home. The kids are hungry. I have to make kiddush. And he just continues davening. And he davens. He's davening to Hashem. She sees he doesn't listen to her. She walks into the shul. No one else. Everyone left. She schleps the talis off. But there was one fellow in the back, Baruch's friend. His name was Rabbi Shmuel Ber Borisover, a famous chassid at Tzemach Tzedek. And he sees this. And he goes over to his friend and he says, I think you need to divorce her because there's a mekach tois here. Halachically, when you purchase something and it's a mekach ta'ut, It's a mistake in the purchase. It's an invalid purchase. You were kona, you acquired through Kiddushin your wife, right? Chuppah could be Kiddushin. It's a mekach tois. She did not understand that you are such a Jew that you daven for hours, and when you finish, you finish. And you didn't understand that she wants you home at 2:00. You're both good people, but it's not a shidduch, because this is your focus and this is her focus. So he turned to his chaver, and this is talking about big chassidim, and he says, you're right. Halachically, a divorce is justified. But what should I do that the Rebbe, that Tzemach Tzedek, gave my wife and I chuppah and kiddushin, and he made a bracha, l'kadosh Abba Yisrael, b'chuppah v'kiddushin, that bracha will be in vain if I divorce her, and therefore I'm not divorcing her. Now think about this answer. Think about the answer, Chevra. We're adults. We're already grandparents. You know what I'm saying? Some of us. What he told this chassid is, you're looking at the situation on the ground, right? On the ground, it's a mistake. And on the ground, I don't have feelings for you. There's something that's transcendent in a chuppah and kiddushin. He said it in the words of the Rebbe, but in other words, the Eibishter sanctioned this, so from on high, it's the way it is. And again, I know you're probably thinking, well, but the Torah says there's a time for a get, and we know that. But we're talking about from your perspective on the ground, there's something higher that creates the bond. And from your perspective, and if the other partner doesn't have that feeling, this is going to be a get. I think I told you, I heard in my house, we were a Holocaust house. My grandparents, they went through the Holocaust, so there was a lot of issues, just like Rahman al-Islam now, you guys went through we all went through a Holocaust, a Shabbos, The trauma is tremendous. The effects for generations will continue. It's just not even a question, right, from everything. Well, you grow up in such a house, there's stress, there's issues. On the other hand, there's a lot of togetherness, and you feel like you're all in one room, and a lot of warmth and a lot of love. It's not this cold house, you know what I'm saying? It's very intimate and very together. And at the same time, there's noise and there's quarreling, you know what I'm saying, and all that. So there were times when, someone in the family made the other person nuts. You know what I'm saying? At least they felt that way. And they said, I'm going to divorce you. And they didn't mean it. So my grandmother, Lelova Sholem, would say, I don't want to hear that. God rises from his chair when he hears those words, and you are not to say that. And that's, that was a typical European response, especially coming out of the Holocaust. But if you take it on a higher level, it's like, this is sanctioned. This is it. They tell the story with the Alter Rebbe's chassid, who had a miserable marriage. And he wanted out. And he came to the Alter Rebbe. He said, Rebbe, I can't anymore. And the Alter Rebbe says, go back another few months. Try again. He goes back 3 months. He says, Rebbe, I tried for 3 months. You got to give me a get. I can't anymore. So the Alter Rebbe saw that he had to now tell him the truth at this point, reveal to him. So he says, that your neshama comes from the time of the second of Zcharia Novi. And during that time, there was a lot of idolatry. Each time you worship idols, you get stoned. It's an aveda, stoning, whatever, right? Each time. The Alter Rebbe says, each time your wife nudges you or makes you crazy, it takes away one of the avedas. It's a ticket for one of the aveda, one time of avodah zarah. And if you worship avodah zarah 750 times, she needs to nudge you 750 times. The man walked out, he accepted it, and he lived happily ever after. You understand, Chevra? What's the point? There is the transcendence. There is something greater happening. And I just want to conclude, the same thing today. We do not understand Hashem's ways. And yes, as Menashe and I were kind of disagreeing, but agreeing that, we have a problem, right? We have a problem now with these enemies. But never forget that who is the one that let this happen? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? And if anyone cannot say that, they need to really ask themselves if they really believe in God. If you believe in Hashem and you believe in Torah, you understand that everything is from the Eibishter, including this catastrophe, which is another Holocaust, right? But that's what it is. And therefore, not to accept what the Eibishter did in the sense of that it's not from God is heresy. I'm sorry. It's heretical. It's like saying there's no God after the Holocaust. Chas v'sholom. And look, 70 years later, look at Yiddishkeit today as a result of the Holocaust. So, not I and not anyone will tell you there had to be a Holocaust for it to be Yiddishkeit of 70 years later. That's Hashem's cheshbonos. I don't know what had to be, not to be, but the fact is that did happen, and we have this situation, and there was a rebuilding, and an Eretz Yisrael, and a return, and a Baal Tshuva movement, all coming out of the Holocaust. In Mitzvah Shem, there's going to be this way and more now, where there'll be greater tshuva and greater commitment and more love and unity. And I'm not from those that will say, you know why this came? This came because the right and the left were fighting cats and dogs and protesting in Tel Aviv. And mamish, they wanted to kill each other and were beating each other. And the Chilonim and the Chavshim and the Datiyim and all that. You're not going to get that out of a Lubavitcher. If you do, something's wrong with him as a Lubavitcher. A real Lubavitcher, we don't know those cheshbonos. But one thing's for sure. There needs to be Avos Yisrael. There needs to be real love between Yidden. Even if you disagree, it's normal. So when we're learning now, it's Bashgacha Pratis that we end up learning chapter 32. In these days, it gives us the koyach to have Avos Yisrael to each other, and Hashem Taka will protect us, will protect our sons, our daughters, our grandkids, and relatives who are on the front and fighting and all over, and protect everyone. And trust me, Gamze Yavor. But hopefully, with Hashem's help, we won't mess up. You know what it says in Tanakh, Machrivayich u'maharisayich meimech yetzeu, where the prophet says, your worst enemies are yourself. The Navi said it 2,000 years ago. Let's hope that doesn't happen now when we become our worst enemies. And what the Rebbe said, I remember in the 70s, after the Yom Kippur War, where the Rebbe spoke about going and taking Damascus. And the Rebbe said, even just for a day. The Rebbe didn't mean they should all of a sudden conquer Damascus and stay there. No, it's not Syria, it's not Eretz Yisrael. But show them who's boss. We can, if we want, become your boss. So stop and watch yourself. And if that can come out of this whole fiasco over here, that the enemies know that we mean business, that will be a gewaldig accomplishment, and we will have better results. But we have to stand strong and not capitulate and not be nefilim be'eineinu, like grasshoppers or, fallen. Oh, because on one hand there's a great busha. How can this happen? Chevre, the Eibishter made it happen. What do you think? The chayal, the tzavayim, the chayalim. You think? And I was very proud of Netanyahu, his first speech after, he said, we thank Hashem, and then he said the Chayalim. He said, with the help of God, he said it, listen to it. And then he says the Chayalim. Before the Chayalim, he said, Be'ez Hashem. It came out of his mouth. Whether he meant it or he prepared it, I don't know, but that came out of his mouth. And the Rebbe made this point over and over, the war of the 6-day war, that, loy bekoichi, v'loy be'oitzim yodi, it's not my strength, it's the Eibishter. So we need to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us the Geula and to give us the Yeshua in an oifen that there's no more killing and no more p'tzayim and invalids and everything else, and that those that are captured should come out b'shleimus and the Eibush have rachmanis on us. It's this is a call from heaven. I don't know. I think you all agree. This is a call from heaven. This isn't something that makes sense. And they went. Man, how could they breach the wall in so many places? Oh, they bombed the drone, hit the reactor. No, where are your guards over there? So I don't know the story. I don't need to know the story. What I need to know is that the Eibishter loves us, and Am Yisrael is the Eibishter's people, and we have to have Avas Yisrael to each and every one of us. Chevra will continue tomorrow. Have a great day. Sei gesund. Bye.